pleasure to introduce our very special guest, Alka Joshi. She is the international best-selling author of the Jaipur Trilogy, The Henna Artist, The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, and The Perfumist of Paris. Her debut novel, The Henna Artist, immediately became a New York Times bestseller and a Reese Witherspoon Book Club pick. It has been translated into 26 languages and is currently in development at Netflix as a television series. Wow. Alka Joshi was born in India and came to the U.S. with her family at the age of 9. She has a BA from Stanford University and an MFA from California College of Arts. She currently lives in the Monterey Peninsula. And without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Alka Joshi.
Thank you, Christina. I'm delighted to be here in Florida. It has been raining like crazy in Northern California, and it's cold, so it's nice to be able to walk around without a jacket on. It's wonderful. I'm so delighted to see so many of you here, and I think I've had a chance to say hello to most of you. Without your patronage, without your reading books and buying books and going to libraries to check out books, we authors wouldn't have anything to do. So thank you so much. I never thought that I would be writing a trilogy. This came as a total surprise to me, as it might have to you. When I first started writing The Henna Artist, I was 52 years old. I was still working as an advertising and marketing professional. And, all of a sudden that recession was upon us in 2008. And that's when I decided, okay, I gotta do something, because a lot of my clients had taken their projects away or delayed them, and I thought, well, what am I gonna do for the next 2 years? One of the things I could do is something my husband had always encouraged me to do, and that was to write fiction. And he goes, you're always making up stories about people as we are in the grocery store, as we are, standing in line at the movies. Why not do something with them that's a long-form format? So then I enrolled in this MFA program, a Master's of Fine Arts at the California College of Arts. And I ended up with my master's thesis is The Henna Artist. And then I was traveling with my mother during the time that I was doing my master's thesis. And I started to realize how much she had sacrificed in order to give me this very independent life that I have. She herself had been taken out of college at the age of 18. She had been arranged in marriage to my dad, and he was a civil engineer, and my grandparents were ecstatic that they had a civil engineer as a son-in-law, because back in the 1950s in India, engineers were rebuilding the country. It was really exciting because this was a time when India needed to be rebuilt, and there were a lot of decisions to be made. What was the infrastructure going to look like? How were we going to educate the children? How were we going to take care of women's education? Things like that. And so my dad and my mother, they get married, and within 4 years, they have 3 kids. And then my mother is super busy all the time, taking care of the family, taking care of us kids, taking care of her husband's family, her own family. There's just, so many things to do. And those of you who have been mothers, you know how much there is constantly to do. It's hard to get away from that. Well, my mentor in my master's program called me one day, and she said, "What are you doing with that book? We don't hear anything about it." I said, "Well, because I'm not doing anything with it." So she said, "I've got some ideas for you. I think we can take this forward." And that's when I started working on it again with her. It took me about a year and several drafts. And then she said, "Okay, I'm going to send it off to my agent." Now, her agent calls me within a couple of months, usually because I pestered her, because I am nothing if not persistent. And so I said, "Emma, remember, my mentor sent you this manuscript." So finally, Emma reads it, and she says, "Okay, I love it. I love the character of Lakshmi. We're going to start working on it." And I said, "Wow, that means I'm going to get published right now. Like, I never even anticipated getting published." And she said, "No, you've got so much more work to do on this novel. You're not getting published right now." And so for the next 3 years, Emma is telling me what to take out, what to leave in, what to change. And we cut 140 pages out of the novel that I sent her. And because she kept cutting off parts of Radha, she kept cutting off parts of Malik, and she said, really, we just need to focus on Lakshmi. So that's why the Henna Artist really became Lakshmi's book. And I think it was so much the better for it. But after 3 years of working with her, I had already been working on the novel total for about 6 years. And I said, Emma, at what point are we sending it off to a publisher? Because if we don't know it's going to be published, why am I doing all this work? So she said, that's not how it works. The way that it works is that we in the publishing industry determine whether or not people are going to be interested in it. And right now, you still need to do work on this novel. So I said, okay, what do I need to do? She said, well, I've taken you as far as I can take you. I'm only an agent. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's not an editor also? I really thought she was going to do all of that. And she said, but now you need professional editors to help you. So then I hire people on her list. I hire that first editor, and the first editor says, yeah, you're not ready to be published, and here are 8 pages of reasons why. And so immediately I think, well, obviously this is not the right editor, because the right editor would tell me, you need to be published right now. So I got somebody else on the list I need to hire. I hired another person, and I really should have stuck with the first editor because this one gave me 18 pages of things that she thought I could be doing differently. And at that point, I was so frustrated, you guys, that I just stopped writing again. And I did not write for another year. So I was looking through my desk drawer for something one day, and I see this novel. This big stack of a manuscript. And I thought, I have spent so much time and energy on this novel. Why is nobody wanting to publish this? So I looked through my desk drawer again at the editorial comments that I had received from both of those editors. And I thought, okay, let me just read this through. And it's like anything else that you haven't looked at in a while. You look at it again and you go, oh, hey, that dress really is better on me than I thought it was going to be. So here I am, I'm reading these notes, and I'm like, okay, I think I know where they're trying to go, and I think if I start following some of these suggestions, maybe it will turn out to be a better novel. And it did. So I sent it all back to Emma, and I said, Emma, it's been 9 years and 25 drafts since I first started working on this novel, and I would really love for you to send it off to a publisher. If you don't, then we're going to have to renegotiate our contract. I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And so Emma said, Emma's been in the business for 30 years, right? So she can speak this way to me because she doesn't need me. I need her more than she needs me. And so she said, Alka, we don't even have a contract. I've just been working with you because I like the book, but you can go anywhere else, anytime. So finally, we do set up a contract, and then Emma sends it off. And we are waiting. And in a couple of months, Mira Books, which is a division of HarperCollins, they end up buying the book. And that was just lovely. But now I have a new editor, Kathy. And Kathy has more changes that she wants me to make. So I'm going to make 5 more of these revisions, 5 more drafts, before the book actually goes off to the printers. When it goes off to the printers, I start another project, which is actually book number 4 that I'm working on now. But because Mom will not leave me alone, I have to listen to him. And he's constantly telling me, you cut out all that stuff about me in the Henna Artist. Now you really need to write about me. And that was interesting because I thought, okay, I know a lot about him. I know where he was raised. I know how he was raised. I know that his mother abandoned him. And I know that he's this entrepreneurial, very loyal person. So I think I could write a story about him. So I start with what I know, and then it gradually develops into this really rich story about the nomads in the Himalayas and the whole story of gold, and why gold is so important to Indian women as a retirement fund and so on. And so when I finished that, then I finished 20 pages of that. My agent says, let's send that off to the editor. So she sent it off, and then immediately we get a contract from HarperCollins. And my agent said to me, do you know how unheard of this is? You're a debut novelist. Nobody has even seen your first book. It's not even out of the printers yet, and they're already giving you a second book contract. So then the HarperCollins folks, they fly me out to New York, and they fly me out to Canada. And we're at their US headquarters and their Canadian headquarters. And I walk into the lobby, and my book covers are everywhere, all over the lobby. And then we walk into the conference room, and the entire staff is gathered there so that we can make a toast to the publication of the Henna Artist eventually. And, I don't really drink champagne. I'm not a big champagne drinker, so I said, no, that's okay. And I could tell immediately the room went. And so I said, no, okay, you know what, wrong answer. I will take a glass of champagne. And so when they were sending me off in the cab back to the airport, I said, Randy, I cannot believe how nice you are to your authors. I've always heard horror stories from authors. And he goes, Alka, we don't do this for every author. We know that the Henna Artist is going to be a big book, and we're counting on it. And so, sure enough, March the 10th comes around. The pre-sales are really strong. We know that it's in all of these bookstores and all of these libraries, and that is my release date. So I have planned all these launch events. On March the 11th, 2020, the pandemic is announced. And every single one of my launch events is completely canceled because the venues will not be open to the public. And then the bookstores shut down, the libraries shut down, and then eventually Amazon stopped shipping out books. And I just thought, oh, just shoot me now. I cannot believe it. What is going on? I have been preparing at that point for 12 years for this book. So I decided, I had started this social media platform on Instagram about a year before the publication of the book. And I didn't want to do it. I had never been on social media before. I wasn't, on Facebook or anything like that. But my editor said, "You've got to learn this." I went on YouTube and I learned how to be on social media. I learned how to do makeup for social media. I learned how to do lighting for social media. All of that stuff is available on Facebook. So I do all of this. I get ready and I go out to all of my book clubs. The fans have been writing to me because they got an ebook or an audiobook or an early copy of the book. And I said, "You guys, I'm here. I am on lockdown too. You can't go anywhere, but neither can I. So start talking to me." And every single night I would do 1, 2, 3 book clubs. And I think that one of the reasons I'm so loyal to book clubs, and I know that many of you are here today, is because they were loyal to me. And they kept me going during a time when, we all felt so isolated, and I have never once felt isolated. So, thank you. So then, we start to gather steam, and then my editor calls and says, "Reese Witherspoon loves your book, and so she's going to name it one of her 2020 book picks." And so immediately, right after she announces that, and by the way, you guys, she is an amazing, amazing person, because what she did for us female authors is she gave us a platform to talk about our books, to give ourselves that kind of publicity that we have never been given before. Nobody just focused on female authors before. The publishing world knew that there was a deficit when it came to publicity and promotion dollars for females. But they had not done anything about it. And Reese Witherspoon came along and said, "You know what? I've got cachet, and I think I'm going to use it for this." So kudos to Reese Witherspoon. I always want to be able to put that out there for her. And then the movie companies start calling. So we had several movie people call and say they wanted to auction the Henna Artist for either a movie or a TV series. And so I called up my agent. I said, "Help, what do I do now?" And she said, let us put you in touch with a screen management agent. So now Ellen Goldsmith Main is my screen management agent in Los Angeles, and she is lovely. And she said to me, "What do you want? You want a movie or you want a TV series?" I said, "I'm a binge whore. I would like to I want a TV series because that's what I like to get involved in." So she said, "Okay, no problem." And so that's what she told everybody who wanted to do anything with the Henna Artist. She said the author wants a TV series. Well, we get some proposals, and one of them is Michael Edelstein and Frida Pinto, the actress, and Miramax TV. And I love them from the very start, because the first thing Michael said to me is, you know what, and we're still Zooming, right, because nobody's doing face-to-face anymore. And so he said, what we see is a henna artist can be an Indian Downton Abbey. And I thought, oh yes, I want it to be lush, and I want it to be well written, and I want it to be well acted, and I said, sold. So that is the team that is producing the Henna Artist. And then they went out to several different streaming companies, and then those streaming companies came back with offers. So we had 5 different offers for the Henna Artist, and Netflix won out, so that is why it's at Netflix, and that was really, really, really exciting. All right, so so now I'm talking to those companies. We have finished the Secret Keeper of Jaipur. It has gone on to the printers, and I realized that Radha is, Lakshmi's younger sister, is not in book number 2, hardly ever, because she's supposed to be in Paris at this time. She ran away with a Frenchman who was trekking through the Himalayas while she was in her boarding school and fell in love with him. She went off to Paris, and she has 2 little girls, and I know that she's in the perfume industry. Why? Because she was so good at mixing henna paste. She made it silkier and finer than anything Lakshmi could have made, and Lakshmi even admitted that. So I thought, what profession would Radha go in where she gets to mix all of these wonderful ingredients and knows how they interact and knows what they can be? Well, she could have gone into cooking because she was a good chef. But that wasn't sexy enough, and if you're going to be in Paris, why not be in the perfume industry? So that is why Radha is in the perfume industry. And I think that she has the ability to discern what is a good fragrance, what is a bad fragrance, because she grew up in India. So she knows about fragrances. You know, when you go to India, how many of you people have ever been to India? Great. And so when you've been, you know that once you step off the plane, the train, the bus, you are inundated with scent. And it could be food, it could be the incense wafting from a temple, it could be the coconut hair oil that your tuk-tuk driver is emanating. So it could be a whole barrage of different scents. And so because of that, Radha is very attuned to the differences in the scents, and that is what makes her such a good perfumer. Now, I know nothing about perfume, so I have to figure out how am I going to learn about perfume. Well, one day I'm talking to Michael, one of the producers of the Henna Artist, and he said, oh, if you want to know about perfume, you have to talk to my friend Anne Gottlieb in New York City. So I fly out to New York City, and I meet with Anne, who is very generous and very gracious with her time. She is the force behind fabulous perfumes like J'adore by Dior, and CK1 and Eternity by Calvin Klein. So she knew what she was talking about, and she got me into a big fragrance lab in New York City, so I could see how Radha does her work in a fragrance lab. That was really helpful. And these perfumers all have what's called a perfume organ in front of them. So just like an organ you might see in a church, it has many different tiers, and then each tier holds all of these hundreds and hundreds of vials of scent. And then Anne also got me to talk to a couple of master perfumers, which was fabulous. Those master perfumers said that they have to memorize 3,000 scents in their nose in order to be able to create fragrance. 3,000 scents. And you have to have an affinity, first of all, for scent. Like you can't just do this out of nothing. But they train their nose, it's a muscle. And they train it over and over and over again to discern all of these scents. And then it takes about 10 years to become a master perfumer, who is the person who actually makes up the formula that then is sent down to the lab, and then the lab puts it together. So that's what Radha is doing. And the people in New York City said, now you have to go to Paris, because in Paris, the perfume capital of the world, you also are going to get master perfumers there with maybe a different leaning. So I went out to Paris and I talked to master perfumers there. They said, now you need to go to Grasse, in the southeastern part of France, where a lot of fragrance is compounded and where it's bottled. So I go to Grasse, and then they said, let's have you go to Lisbon, because in Lisbon there are some other perfumers you need to talk to. So, you know, I get to go to fabulous places to do my research, which is why I do not write about the New York City sewer system. I don't want to go there. I have all of this amazing information. In Lisbon, I met with an 85-year-old gentleman who had been in the fragrance industry forever. His name is Yves de Chiry, and his family had been in the fragrance industry for centuries in France. But he was now living in Lisbon. He's totally retired. And he was telling me in the 1970s in Paris, which is when Radha is living in the Perfumist of Paris, he said that, you know, he told me all about that time, what it was like, how difficult it was for a woman to become a master perfumer in that era. Not so anymore, but it was really, really difficult. And there were maybe 3 women in the whole industry who had made it. One of them was named Sophia Grossman, and she smoked like a chimney. And so I said, Eve, how can a woman smoke so much and then still be able to create fragrance? He said, well, I don't know, but she did it, and she's the force behind some of the most popular fragrances today that people wear. And so this is why, in the Perfumist of Paris, Radha's boss, Delphine, is a smoker. So in case you're wondering why I put that in there, I thought that is a fascinating little find I have to put in here. And of course, I put as Radha's company whom she works for, it's the House of Yves, which is a nod to my friend Yves now. Yves only consented to talk to me, he said, after I read your books. He said, once I read your books, I'll let you know whether I want to talk to you. And so after he had done so, he wrote to me and he goes, okay, I'll talk to you. Come on out to Portugal and I'll do that. So armed with all of this research, I start writing the Perfumist of Paris. I had only gotten through, like, you know, maybe half of my research at that point, when my agent said, okay, what do you have, and let's send it to the editor and see if they want to give you a third book contract. And I said, seriously, I don't have anything written down, I just have my notes. So she said, well, write me a couple of paragraphs about just some summary. So I wrote a summary, and once again, HarperCollins bought it right away. So I have this incredible, I think, kind of a fairy tale of you know, how my life has become as an author. I don't think most people have this experience, so I am really fortunate, but I also want you to know I'm not an overnight success, because it did take me so long to write that first book and to get it published. Now I know exactly what not to do as a novelist. I know how to start a novel, how to end a novel. I know how to maintain tension throughout, so that is something that comes a lot easier, and it makes it a lot faster to write novels now. So that is sort of my trajectory on how I got here. And now I'm working on that 4th book I was telling you about, which is taking place in 1937 in India, and that is the interwar period. It's between the 2 world wars. And there's a young nurse. She is taking care of a patient who is the India Frida Kahlo, and her name was Amrita Shergill. She was an amazing impressionist painter, and she painted mainly in the south of India, but she had been born and raised actually in Hungary because she was half Hungarian. So in my novel, this nurse is taking care of this famous patient. The patient dies unexpectedly, and the nurse is blamed. She loses her job. And in order to redeem herself and find out what really happened to the painter, she goes about on a quest to learn more about the painter's life. And in so doing, she has to go to Prague, she has to go to Paris, and she has to go to Florence, and so I have to go to those places. So my husband and I are going to leave in 2 days, and so I do want to acknowledge my fabulous husband, who actually is the inspiration for Dr. Kumar in the Henna Artist, not because he's a doctor, but because he's a fabulous person who's very enlightened about women and their choices. And so he's sitting back there. Brad, raise your arm. And sitting next to him is my inspiration for Malik, who is my younger brother, Piyush. So yeah, I bring my troop with me everywhere. So now I would love to answer any questions you guys might have about my journey. Yes.
Have you considered, I know that you're in the crest of your career right now and you're really enjoying it, but have you considered starting some kind of, I'm sure it would be very expensive, that's okay. You're worth it. Some kind of a writing mentorship thing on Zoom or on YouTube or something? Because the way that you just described your experience was like perfection.
Oh, thank you. So the question is, have I ever thought about starting a writing workshop or some kind of a writing mentoring program? I haven't so far. I get asked to do that for various people, and right now I feel like I'm too busy writing, and I don't want to take too much time away from that, but I want to keep that open for the future. There's something called masterclass.com where you have all these fabulous people teaching maybe little segments. I've listened to the Margaret Atwood segment and the James Patterson segment and all these other authors. And so I think I would consider doing something like that at one point so that a lot of people can hear whatever I've learned about in a short session. Yeah. Hi.
I heard that the first sentence of a novel is extremely important and it takes a lot of thought to get it just right. Is that true?
So the question is it true that the first sentence of a novel is probably the most important one you're going to write? That is absolutely true. Remember in the Henna Artist, it starts with independence changed everything and independence changed nothing. It took me a long time to come up with that sentence. It took me a really long time. I kept trying different ways to get into it. But really what I was trying to say is the basic fabric and the people of India hadn't changed. It was the circumstances of suddenly becoming a non-colonized country that had changed. And so there were some things that were the same as what Lakshmi had experienced when she first got to Jaipur, and there were other things that had changed. So yes, that one took me a long time. And of course, one of the things that had happened is my editor had said, you need to put a cast of characters in because your characters have such unusual names that it's going to be difficult for readers to follow. And so when I did that, when I set up the cast of characters, I thought, oh my God, this is just like Dickens. Dickens does that in every one of his books. And then I thought it was a season of light, it was a season of dark, and so I thought, okay, boom, independence changed, some things and then not other things. Yeah. Thank you for your question. All right, yes?
In the fourth novel that you're describing, there is an Indian artist. Is that based on a real person?
Yeah, it's based on this woman named Amrita Sher Gill. She died at a very young age, probably 28, and she was one of those who lived hard and died young, lived fast and died young. So she was a fascinating character to write about, and I've done all this research on her.
Right, so that's a follow-up question.
Yeah.
How is it different for you as an author to write about someone who is a historical person and in contrast to someone who's a person in your imagination?
Well, that's a really good question. So the question is, how different is it for me to write about somebody who actually existed in reality versus all of the characters who have heretofore come from my imagination? Wow, what a great question. I've not been asked that question before. I just think about the character in my novel, this famous patient, as also an imaginary character because I'm changing so many things about her. Yes, it's loosely based, and really it is an homage to this painter. I want to be really careful and respectful of her reputation, but also I'm changing enough things that hopefully it doesn't come out, it comes out in a positive light about her. Yes, and it doesn't, really reek of exactly her. Yeah. Thank you. That was a good question. All right. Does anybody want to? Yes.
Hi. When you're writing about some episode and the characters, like in the book, something you're doing or whatever, do you develop your own conversations with them as you're writing it?
Wow. Okay, another great question. Do I develop conversations with my characters as I am writing them? Yes, in fact, yes, I actually do. Okay, so I'll give you an example. My editor at HarperCollins said, when she first got the manuscript, she said, I love the story, and I love your characters because they are good, bad, and indifferent, right? The characters that I write about are just like in real life, just like all of us. We do good things, we do bad things, sometimes, you know, it doesn't even matter what we're doing. And she said, but the only person who really seems to be two-dimensional is Hari. So in the Henna Artist, Lakshmi's husband is a bad man. You know, he beats up on her, and he gives her presents that he's actually stolen from other people. And, you know, he's just not a nice guy, which is, I had to create a not nice guy so she would leave her marriage. I needed a reason for her to leave. And so I thought, okay, what am I going to do with this guy? I actually told Kathy, I don't want to change his character because I hate him. And so why should I make him nice? And she said, well, you just have to try to find his humanity because your reader is smart enough to realize this is a two-dimensional character unless you change him. So then I asked Hari, I finally just asked him, I go, why are you this crappy person? What makes you so crappy? And he gave me the answer. And he said, okay, so I am a young Indian male growing up in this patriarchal society. I am considered more important than the women of the society. And I have been raised to think I am God's gift to the planet. So naturally, when I got married, I assumed that my wife would do everything that I asked her to do. And if I want to bed her one night, she should be willing. And Lakshmi doesn't do that, right? She has her own ideas about what she wants, and I don't think she wants children, and so, you know, she keeps herself child-free on purpose. When he finds that out, he gets really upset with her, and I think that's when he starts abusing her. And then the gossip eaters come along, and, you know, those are the busybodies of the village, and they say, Hari, you can't be very much of a man if you haven't been able to impregnate your wife in 2 years. And that was the point at which Lakshmi knew she had to leave, or he might have done some serious damage to her. So I said, well, thank you, Hari, thank you for that information. And then I went all the way back to page 1, and I had to start seeding those parts of his personality in there. So then by the end of the novel, I see that he has redeemed himself to a certain extent. He is now working with these women in a way, you know, these poverty-stricken women, these women who are seeking refuge from difficult situations. He's working with them in a way that his own mother used to back in the village, and that Lakshmi used to. So now he has empathy for the women in difficult situations, but he also understands a little bit more about what his wife Lakshmi was all about. So then by the end of the novel, I get onto the railway platform, right? Remember that railway platform, Lakshmi is on the train, and the train is about to leave. Well, originally I had had Samir standing on that platform saying goodbye to Lakshmi. And he was, as the train was pulling away, putting that pocket watch that she had left on the counter, he was giving it to her through the window. And when I got to the end of my draft with Hari having been changed in some way, I realized that's not the right ending. It has to be Hari standing on the platform. So the version that you read today is the one where Hari is standing on the platform, and he is saying goodbye to Lakshmi, and she's saying goodbye to him, because essentially what they're saying is, these are not the people that we used to be, and that relationship has failed. We don't need to be in that anymore, and so goodbye, good luck to you, goodbye, good luck to you. In The Perfumist of Paris, and I don't want to give a spoiler, but I had to ask Radha what she wanted to do towards the end, because I didn't know. I thought she could go one way or she could go another way, and I did not know what way was the best for her. So I just let her talk to me. I just, you know, asked her, and she eventually gave me that answer. In every single one of my books, as you know, I am talking about the empowerment of women. What is it that we can do to empower them? What is it that they can do to take that power for themselves? And ultimately, Radha decided to take the power for herself, which is what she told me. So I think that I've been living with these characters for, let me think now, 15 years. 15 years. And if you've been married for 15 years, if you've had children that are over 15 years old, by that time you know who they are. You know what they like. You know whether they like coffee or tea. You know whether, what flavor of ice cream they like. You know whether they like to stay up late or go to bed early. And I know everything there is to know about these characters in the same way. I have been, sleeping with these characters, bathing with these characters, living with these characters. I am not anywhere where I don't think about these characters. So they are constantly living in my head. And when the trilogy was over, these characters did not go away. They're still in my head. They're still doing things. And people keep asking me, am I going to come back to the trilogy at some point? And I might. And I recently asked a group I was speaking to in South Carolina, I said, hey guys, what do you think I should write about if I were to continue the trilogy? And I had a ton of ideas, different things that I could do with different characters. And what I might do eventually is to write about this next generation. There is Nikki, who is making an appearance in The Perfumist of Paris. That's the boy that she gave up for adoption. What was it, like 17 years ago, 18 years ago. And he suddenly shows up in her life and he wants to know who she is. So, and by the way, I had to talk to a lot of adoption experts to get that information. I talked to adoptive parents, people who had been adopted, and also the birth mothers of, people who gave up their babies. It's an interesting thing to get to know these characters and to know them even deeper doing that kind of research. I want to read to you something. So talking about the empowerment of women. This is towards the end of the book, and Radha, who has kind of a difficult mother-in-law, in a way that Lakshmi did not. Lakshmi had this wonderful mother-in-law who was so caring and kind and taught her all these things about herbal remedies. But Radha has a more difficult situation with her mother-in-law because her mother-in-law is French and she wants the grandkids to be raised as little Catholic girls, and Radha's like, I want them to be more international and decide for themselves what religion they want to follow as they grow up. Okay, so Florence and Radha are talking. She's quiet. We listen to each other breathe. Finally, she says, 2 days ago, I told Pierre that after you returned from Agra, you seemed different. I don't think it's just because Nikki showed up. It's beyond that. There's a subtle feeling about you, in you. It's as if in India you found a piece of yourself you had lost. There it is again. The idea that we women lose track of ourselves. Lakshmi always said henna was a way for a woman to find a part of herself that she might have mislaid. Sheila said she wanted to bring the forgotten women back to life because while their painted images were famous, they themselves were invisible. They'd been discarded like candy wrappers tossed on the ground. Is that erasure of us something other people do to us, or do we women do it to ourselves? So, once again, this is just, a running theme with me, and I think it always will be in my books. I don't want women to be erased. They have so much to contribute, and they have contributed so much for which they do not get recognition. And it's important to me that that happens. I also want to read to you this other little passage, and it is a passage in which Radha goes back to India to find the missing fragrance, the missing ingredient that she is looking for in the fragrance project she's been assigned. And what she sees is the courtesans have their own fragrance factory in Agra. And by the way, the courtesans were fascinating if you want to know more about them. So they have a fragrance factory, and it's so different from the more sterile environment that Radha knows in Paris. So here's her reaction to it. Suddenly, the door to the back alley opens and a man walks through it, pushing a wheelbarrow filled with cow patties. He upends a lot in a corner of the room next to a larger mound of similar cow pies. Just as I'm about to turn my attention back to the essential oil, I see two of the workers using large buckets to scoop the cow dung into copper vessels. The worker at the hearth stands and places both his hands on the metal pot. He seems to be testing the temperature with his palms, In class, the workers would be using a temperature gauge. I watched, fascinated, wondering why they're cooking manure. As if she's read my thoughts, Hazi says, it's not cow dung, it's soil, collected after the first monsoon rain. Patties made of soil. I walk over to the pail of essential oil and tap the worker on the shoulder. He steps aside to let me sniff. Hi, Bapan. Suddenly, I'm back in Audrey, 7 years old, my hair hanging in a messy braid down my back. The monsoons have come and left the earth bleeding water. I'm stepping out into the open area in the back of our hut to look at the sky, where patches of blue fight for space amidst pregnant clouds. On the ground in front of me, the 3 metal pails I've left out overnight are filled with rainwater, which means I won't have to fetch water from the farmer's well for several days. Steam rises from the ground. The air is dense with tiny particles of water that haven't yet been dried by the weak sun. All around me is the scent of promise and potential. I spin in a circle, I let the drops wash over me. The scent of autumn merges with the scent of my surroundings, creating something moist and sugary and earthy fragrance. Hazi is grinning at my reaction. This, rather, is the scent of rain, mitti ither. So that's just, I love the juxtaposition between what Radha is used to in Paris and then the way fragrance is compounded in India. And that particular fragrance I'm talking about, the scent of rain, it wasn't even discovered until a few decades ago in France. There are so many ingredients that go into fragrance that come from India, that have been coming from India for centuries, that are not recognized as being Indian or from the Indian subcontinent. And this is also part and parcel of what I'm trying to impart in every single one of my novels, that India deserves your recognition, not as a place completely of poverty or of underdevelopment, but as a place where many of the riches that you experience today, that you derive comfort from, do come from India. And this goes for the spices, right? This is why we have those golden lattes at Starbucks. This goes for the gold and the jewelry and the gem cutting that comes from India. And this also goes for the ingredients that go into perfume and many other kinds of things that you use every single day. So, and now, currently, you are getting a lot of brain power from India because of all the software and hardware engineers that are powering your iPhones, your laptops, your screens. You know, that is also part of what I want you to take away from all of these novels. Yes?
How has the empowerment of India improved?
So in the empowerment of India, of women, how has that improved in India? Well, it's interesting. I was telling my younger brother, the one back there in the hat, that I wanted to know about what was happening with women today, because I knew I would be asked this question. So in 2019, before COVID, we went to India, and I talked to a lot of young women. These are women that are probably anywhere from 18 to 35 years old. And I said, what's life like for you today? Now, for the village girls, it hasn't changed that much. So if you're in a rural area, you're probably not as well educated. You can't be educated because there's no school nearby. And so those girls pretty much have the same life that they always did in 1955 India. The women in the cities, however, are greatly improved in terms of education. India's middle class has grown tremendously in the last several decades. And so what that means is that the young women and the young men are able to be educated, that a family will spend the money also on the girls' education for college. So these young women are so focused on their studies and so focused on the careers that they want to have that they are not interested in getting married right away. And also many of them have developed a voice for themselves. They have become empowered because of the knowledge that they have gained, which means that they also have ideas about whether or not they want to have children and how many they want to have and when they want to have them. And also they want to negotiate with their parents whether or not they want to marry outside of their caste. especially if they've fallen in love with a boy who is different caste. So about 70 to 80% of marriages in India are still arranged. And if you've been watching Indian matchmaking on Netflix, then you know that that is the case. And then about 20 to 30% are, women who are either choosing not to marry or to marry someone they love. They're choosing their own partners, or they're putting it off. In my mother's day, 18 was considered a spinster, and my grandparents were really worried that at 18 they would never find anyone for her to marry, which is, really amazing because my mother was so beautiful. I don't think she would have had any trouble. But the cutoff age now is about 28 to 30. So if you as a young woman are not married by the time you're 28 to 30, the whole extended family will go into action and try to find the right partner for you. Oh my gosh, everybody panics. As if somehow you're going to turn into a pumpkin, right, at a certain age. But yes, I do think that women in the cities feel a lot more empowered. And with that also is coming a divorce rate that is climbing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not easy to get a divorce, but it is becoming more common. And in 1955, which is the reason that I started the Henna Artist in 1955, is that was the first year that it became legal for Hindus to obtain a divorce. But it was still made really hard because the societal pressure to stay married is huge. And I don't know if you guys remember, but in the 1960s in our country here in the United States, it was very difficult to get a divorce. And if you were divorced, it was, there was a lot of stigma behind that. People didn't want to admit easily that they were divorced. So that same thing is still going on in India. The women who are getting divorced are able to support themselves because they are in careers. So there's really no reason for them anymore to stay married if they don't want to.
Is it against the religion to get divorced?
No, it's not against any religion to get divorced. In fact, I think the Muslims just say they're divorced if they just say it 3 times, right? I divorce her, I divorce her, I divorce her.
I recently read the novel Honor,
Yeah.
which was one of the saddest books I ever read.
Yeah.
And your depiction seems so happy. It's almost like it's from another country or another world.
Yeah.
How do you relate the two?
Well, every novelist is going to write what their experience is, and I don't know if she's writing from her experience. I don't know if that experience is from something she read. I don't know, but I read that book, and I had some issues with that book. And I think every book is just going to be different, and what you make of it. What I think I really am trying to say is that there is good, bad, and ugly in every situation, in every country that you're in. And so, yeah, you're going to find parts that are ugly, but I don't think it's worth glorifying them to be able to get audiences. So one of the things I really want to do is to be able to tell you guys the good, bad side of India, and there are many ways in which you can appreciate it. So one of the things I keep hearing a lot from audiences is that they've never been to India and now they're interested in going, and I can't imagine a better outcome than that. Thank you so much for everything. I want to thank Christine Ornish today for inviting me here. I also want to thank Books and Books because they have brought books to sell in the back corner. And also, if you want to join the library, you get this free tote bag, and if you would like me to sign that tote bag, that would be great. And I'm going to sit in the back there and sign any of the books that you have. Okay? Thank you so much.